As a starting point, Gen Xers, at least late-stage Gen Xers, and baby boomers don't get caught up in the high consumption patterns of millennials and Gen Z. And if we dig deep into that group and ask the question, what do frugal individuals within this group not spend money on? Well, the answer is quite revealing. First, they don't spend money on high-end electronics. You would never see anyone from this group buy the latest smart refrigerator or a surround sound system for their living room to watch sports. Not to mention that they're probably 2 or 3 or 4 versions back on the iPhone. For example, I have the iPhone 14 Pro. The iPhone 16 Pro is also outstanding, and I understand that there's a difference, but if you were to ask me what the difference is, I couldn't tell you, aside from maybe battery life. Those that are frugal in this segment of the market don't get triggered by owning the latest and greatest thing. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't matter how old you are, sometimes you get triggered, but they control their emotions and spend time enjoying the things in life that don't cost as much. For example, they don't buy bottled water. Now, I don't know if you remember this or not, I certainly do, but it used to be green to buy bottled water. It was a health statement. If you would show up someplace and you didn't have bottled water, well, you weren't a healthy person. You'd walk to your Toyota Prius, get in your Prius, and drive away carrying your bottled water. In fact, people who were of that ilk actually looked down on those of us who used filtered water. Now we're back in style. Having filtered water instead of bottled water means that you are green and that you are conserving the planet. But back in the day, that wasn't the case. Also, remember, the same held true for paper bags versus plastic bags. There was never a scenario where you brought your own bag. Now there is, and frugal people bring their own bag because they don't want to pay 10 cents for the bag at the supermarket, at least here in New York. The frugal individuals in this group tend to buy pre-owned cars. They don't buy new cars. About a year ago, I put out a video on whether you should buy a new or pre-owned car in retirement, and the model car was the Toyota Camry. The conclusion, by the way, was that you should buy it pre-owned for a lot of reasons, but the biggest one was that the savings was tremendous, and the comments were quite visceral. People had very strong views of that. So before I put out this video, I ran a poll to the audience, and I said, what percentage of you will buy your next car new versus pre-owned? And as I thought, 67% of the group said that they would buy their next car pre-owned, and 30% said that they would buy their next car new. Now that tells me a lot of things. The first is that 67% of those people who watch this channel tend to be a little bit more on the frugal side, which I think is perfect for this video. The next point, frugal people in this group also don't have cable TV. In fact, I would say that as a general rule, I'm not sure who still has cable TV because you can basically get the same thing with a streaming service. Something like YouTube TV or Hulu will give you access to the same live TV that you can get on cable. And frankly, the infrastructure for cable is quite expensive. To run cable to your house is the same cost to run a fiber optic line to your house, and the fiber optic line can carry a lot more data. Then you have to pay for one box per room, one remote per room, and any upgrades to your service, which you can now get on a streaming box for a lot less in many cases. Next, frugal people in this category don't own McMansions. Now, there's a story behind the McMansion. It's one that you probably don't know. Most people think the reason McMansion is called a McMansion is because it's very big, which is true, and it's close to the street, which is also true, which saves on the cost of land. But the first McMansions went up in the 1980s, and they went up in California, and they were built with substandard material. And so because these were big, beautiful homes that fell apart very quickly, that was how they originally got the name, or that's when they originally got the name McMansion. The building quality for this type of home went away during the global financial crisis. They stopped building these very big, very cheaply put together homes, probably because the banks wouldn't sign off on them anymore, but I digress. But now you can still own one, if they're still standing anyway, at a bargain price. Still, those who are frugal tend not to buy this type of home. They'd rather own a much smaller home that's well built, as would we all. Next, they don't engage in expensive hobbies. Now, per capita, late stage Gen Xers and baby boomers who are close to retirement or in retirement have a lot of hobbies. Why? Because they have the time to enjoy them. In fact, truth be told, the one that I've always been fascinated with but would never spend the money on is owning a powerboat. Chris Craft, for example, has a wonderful powerboat. The one that I looked at one point was $595,000 to start. And of course, aside from the fact that I'd never spend that kind of money on a powerboat, my wife wouldn't let me spend that money on a powerboat, so it was a non-starter. They tend to look at more reasonable hobbies. For example, many of you know that I like collecting coins. It's a little geeky, I admit, but it's something I've been doing since I was a kid. In fact, my father and I started coin collecting together. It's something I've continued on and off for many, many years. Recently, I've decided that I'm going to get ready for a trip to Italy next year, so I'm doing the Rosetta Stone Italian course. It's about $180, but it's a lifetime of language that I can learn in just a few months. When I get to Italy next year, I will impress my family with my Italian capability. At least I hope so. Next, they don't buy high-end designer clothes or designer products. In fact, if you know the economics of brands like Gucci or a lot of the other really expensive designer products out there, the group that buys them the most is the middle class. And the same holds true with high-end cars and other high-end products, by the way. If you were to take a drive just outside of New York to one of the wealthiest towns around, it's Greenwich, Connecticut, you would see a strange phenomenon. That strange phenomenon is that you would drive past all of these homes, and if you could actually see the home from your car, which is rare because they're set so far back on the property, but if you saw one and happened to be driving as a car was coming off the property, you'd see an American-made car. You wouldn't see a Land Rover, a Range Rover. You wouldn't see a BMW, not usually anyway. It happens, but the fact is, old money, which is where a lot of people in Greenwich, Connecticut sit, they are part of old money family, they tend to take their wealth and bring it down. They don't want to display it. This is also why their houses are set back. You can't see the house and you can't see them. They value their privacy. And if you look at the parents or the kids from these families, by the way, they're not wearing really expensive clothes. Why? Because they don't have anything to prove. Oftentimes, not always of course, but oftentimes the families that have the least amount of money are the ones that spend the most amount of money on things like $500 sneakers or that $6,000 purse that you have to have because you need to keep up with the Joneses. Don't get me wrong, designer clothes and high-end cars aren't universally disliked by those with knowledge of money, but the biggest purchasers are what are called aspirational consumers. Certainly, anyone who's frugal isn't going to spend money on designer clothes no matter how much money they have. Next, extended warranties. Now, you've heard this and you've heard this and you've heard this. You know it's true, but yet there are a lot of people out there who still buy extended warranties because they're not sure. Let's talk about what an extended warranty is. An extended warranty covers certain things if a product goes bad. And every time you check out at the electronics store, either online or in person, you always have the option to buy a 3-year extended warranty. Now, what does it cover? Probably not what breaks down. In fact, an extended warranty is the most profitable part of the sale for most products. I will say that the only extended warranty I have is Apple's extended warranty, and that's because I have kids that I know tend to break their phones. But outside of that, I don't really buy extended warranties. For most extended warranties, there are deductibles, labor exclusions, part exclusions, and frankly, by the time it's time to claim the extended warranty, either you throw the product out most of the time, that's why they're so profitable, or people can't remember where they bought their extended warranty from. So as a consequence, frugal people in this category have already done the work and they know that it just doesn't make sense. Finally, those who are frugal out there don't impulse buy. Now, everybody impulse buys to some degree, but by and large, they don't fall for the normal tricks. What are the normal tricks? Well, most people think of impulse buying as what's on the counter next to the checkout, but that's not necessarily where most of the impulse buying occurs. It occurs at eye level as you're walking through a store. For example, if you go to the grocery store and you have your list, the one thing that seems to end up on the Schmidt family list, I don't know why, almost every time, is Oreo cookies. And the fact is, I shop with a list. I know that those Oreos are going to end up in the basket, so I actually stay away from the aisle that sells the Oreos, but somehow they end up there anyway. And then there's the adjacent product. For example, if you buy a laptop, how many people have bought a laptop and you've bought the laptop cover because it's right there and you thought, hey, I just spent $2,000 on a laptop, I need to protect it. How many of you still use that cover? If it's 1 out of 100, I would be surprised actually, because every time I buy a laptop, if I see a laptop cover there, I tend to put it in the basket. Now I take it out, but back in the day, I actually used to buy it and I would use it for a couple of days and then it would go missing, or it would be too difficult, or I'd have a backpack that already padded the laptop, so why do I need to double pad it? The point is, it's an adjacent purchase. People know that you're probably going to buy it and probably never use it. If you like this video, check out that video on why Gen X is in big financial trouble. Also, don't forget to click subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a lot going on in the world today, and a lot of that's going to affect you personally when it comes to your finances. At least it looks like it will. So make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications. We work very hard to get what's out there in here for you. This is Jeff Schmidt. I'll see you on the next video.
Holy Schmidt!